Like the rest of the country, Pozsony was busily preparing to celebrate the millennium of Hungarian statehood. What better way to commemorate this event than by commemorating the historical fact that in Pozsony, the capital of Hungary during the Ottoman period, 11 Habsburg monarchs were crowned kings of Hungary between 1563 and 1830. The Royal Hill, located in the southern part of the city on the banks of the Danube, where, as part of the coronation ceremony, the monarch would perform symbolic sword strokes signifying the defense of the country, was demolished in the 1870s. In 1892, the city council decided to erect the monument on the site of the former Coronation Hill. As early as May 2, Karol Nyseidler, a member of the National Assembly, proposed at the city council meeting that an extraordinary session be convened on June 8 to discuss the erection of the Coronation Monument. At that meeting, Deputy Mayor Paul Toller submitted a motion regarding the erection of the memorial statue, which he envisioned as monumental, and it was stated that the monument must be completed by the millennium. The city council wanted a sculptor from Pozsony to design the monument, which was intended to be monumental. Some council members recommended Victor Tilgner, a sculptor living in Vienna but born in Pozsony, who had previously been commissioned by the emperor to create a work of art. At the same time, barely a year earlier, Pozsony had celebrated a young talent who had reimagined a time-worn theme with a fresh, unique perspective. His work depicting Christ on the cross had made János Fadrusz a nationally renowned sculptor, thereby inadvertently turning him into a rival to his former mentor, Tilgner. The city council ultimately decided to invite both artists to submit a design each. Tilgner, feeling offended by the request, declined, thus opening the opportunity for Fadrusz to prove his competence as the sole entrant. The young artist, who had Moravian and German ancestry, saw his sense of Hungarian identity further strengthened during his student years in Vienna, and he sought to express his national commitment through his works. For this reason, he chose the motto
Vitam et sanguinem pro rege nostro
as the theme for the monument in the coronation city, since the estates of Pozsony had used this exclamation to declare that they would stand by Maria Theresa, sacrificing their lives and blood during the War of the Austrian Succession. Fadrusz presented the completed design in June 1893 in the council chamber of the Pozsony City Hall. The design was met with unanimous approval, and, based on a resolution by the city council, Fadrusz was commissioned to construct the monument. The statues were to be carved from Carrara marble at twice life size. The unveiling ceremony was scheduled for the fall of 1896. In one of his letters, the sculptor wrote that the sight of the statue of Maria Theresa in Vienna had also influenced his choice of this subject. I strove to avoid all the usual goddesses and Greek geniuses and to bring to life a piece of Hungarian history as it was and as the world knows this era, not as our dear neighbors interpret it. I'm referring to the statue of Maria Theresa in Vienna. Every time I saw it, anger boiled up inside me. One can hardly find any trace of the Hungarians in it, even though the Austrian Empire and the entire era of Maria Theresa simply would not have existed without the Hungarians' unparalleled enthusiasm and valor. The whole thing, carved in granite and bronze which cost $1 million, is a historical lie. An expensive lie, but all the more hideous for it. His nationwide fame also helped him secure the studio in the Várkert Bazaar in Buda where Alejo Strabel and, later, Károly Lotz had worked before him. It was here that he began sculpting his works in clay at twice life size. Fadrusz is currently working in the Buda Bazaar building, in the very same studio that belonged to Strabel years ago. This is where the statue of Maria Theresa is being created. As soon as we step inside, a surprise. We don't see just one Maria Theresa, but two. One made of clay and one alive. The former on horseback, the latter nearby, sitting on a sort of large chest, dressed in a beautiful period Hungarian Rococo gown. The young sculptor is adjusting the latter's attire with polite gestures. "Oh, never turn your heads away, my lovely ladies. There's no need to warn the gentlemen. They wouldn't do that anyway." This adjustment of her dress is entirely innocent. What's more, it's an artistic act, and the lady in question is a model. Fadrusz traveled to Carrara with the completed models to personally supervise the carving. Unexpected difficulties arose during the return journey. Special railway cars had to be requested from the Italian Ministry of War to transport the extremely heavy parts of the statue. This resulted in a 2-month delay, which forced the unveiling ceremony to be postponed. Reports from Pozsony indicate that the statue of Maria Theresa has been erected in the square designated by the city authorities, where the Coronation Hill once stood, and handed over to the statue committee. The statue's unveiling ceremony, to be held in the presence of the king and the government, will not take place until next spring, as the onset of winter makes it impossible to hold the ceremony outdoors. The unveiling ceremony was held on May 16, 1897, amid stormy, rainy weather instead of spring sunshine. No Hungarian monument had ever before received such distinguished attention from the Viennese court. Franz Joseph and numerous members of the royal family honored the event with their personal presence. Also in attendance were Prime Minister Deju Banfi and several ministers, as well as Deju Szilagyi, the Speaker of the House of Representatives. Not since the glorious days of the old coronations and diets has such a distinguished audience gathered within the ancient walls of Pozsony as today. That era truly came to life again, when our young kings, upon whose heads the crown of St. Stephen was first placed, brandished their swords toward the four corners of the world on the banks of the Danube in Pozsony. A reporter for the Budapesti Hírlap provided a vivid account of the members of the royal family, not even omitting the children. Prince Otto brought his young son, Prince Charles, with him, and the dark-haired, extremely lively little boy, dressed in a sailor's uniform, won the audience's hearts. He saluted the cheering crowd with great grandeur in place of his father, and when he arrived at the tent, he shook hands with the royal prince's uncles with complete dignity, and they kissed him. 19 years later, the 10-year-old boy was crowned King of Hungary in Buda. The king arrived at the scene amid a procession of the county's ornate banners. Once everyone had taken their places, the open-air mass began, celebrated by Bishop Imre Bend of Nitra. Following this, the mayor of Pozsony, Gustav Draxler, asked the monarch for permission to unveil the statue. At the end of his brief, military-style speech, the king gave the order to unveil the statue. However, the soaked, swollen ropes held fast, and the tarp descended only slowly and gradually, thereby further heightening the curiosity of the excited crowd. The impact was immense. Thunderous cheers rang out across the square. The statue is truly magnificent. The mesmerizing figure of the crowned queen, as well as the two figures flanking her, especially the Curic warrior, both individually and together, captivated the viewer's gaze. Large golden letters gleam on the pedestal, Vitam et Sanguinum. The king, who gazed at the statue in surprise for a moment, immediately expressed his admiration for János Fadrusz, the artist, whom Mayor Draxler introduced. Fadrusz himself is an interesting figure. In his ceremonial Hungarian suit, he bears a striking resemblance to the Curic warrior in the sculpture. The resemblance is perhaps no coincidence, as Fadrusz was fond of borrowing his own features for his works. Thus, we can recognize his facial features in one of the secondary figures of the King Matthias monument in Cluj-Napoca, as well as in the younger of the two atlases located in the foyer of the Cristinávaros wing of the Buda Castle, which houses the National Széchenyi Library. The ceremony concluded in the evening with a gala theatrical performance. On the occasion of the celebration, the king awarded honors. In recognition of his achievements, Fadrusz received the Knight's Cross of the Order of Franz Joseph. More eloquent than any award, however, was the tribute written by Károly Lajka, who would later become a famous art critic, in the pages of UJ Idok. the first Hungarian sculpture to possess epic power and grandeur, the first that bears no resemblance to any other sculpture, neither modern nor ancient. Mighty arms hewed it from a block of white marble. The rock's strength remains within it. Simple and unposed, it makes an impact through its mere presence, without any artifice. The language in which it speaks to us is the language of power and serenity. It does not merely depict. It lives, a life multiplied in multiplied grandeur. Our delight lies in the fact that we, too, now have such a statue. We are proud of this man who suddenly stands before us, fully formed. We love him with true love. That is all we can give him. His statues will take care of the glory. So the veil has fallen, the celebratory crowd has dispersed, and now, in calmer circumstances, we too can view this unparalleled masterpiece of Hungarian sculpture. The narrator of our virtual tour is a journalist from Magyar Szalon, who, years earlier, was the first to write a detailed report on the statue based on the model submitted for the competition. Seated on a mighty steed atop a hill, Maria Theresa surveys the landscape. The Hungarians have already defeated the enemy, and the queen has come here to gaze with grateful eyes upon the devotion of her saviors. The queen appears before us in all her beauty and happiness. She wears a crown on her head, holds the scepter in her right hand, and grasps the reins of her horse with her left. The train of her gown flows down from the horse. The modeling of the horse is truly masterful. The court stables provided a magnificent thoroughbred Spanish stallion to serve as the model for Fadrusz. With its noble arched neck, its long, elegantly braided mane, its bushy tail, and its powerful build, which, thanks to its lively movement, stands out beautifully from every angle. This noble animal is truly worthy of carrying such a spirited, conquering princess. The ground on which the steed is forced to come to a halt by the strong reining is overgrown with brush. Here and there, fragments of a gun carriage and cannon wheels are visible, a sign that the battle has ended and peace reigns. To the left of the queen on horseback stands a Hungarian nobleman. Looking at the sovereign, he points toward the plains, as if to say, "This is your loyal Hungary." The depiction of this figure is as dignified as it is historically accurate. Tassilo Festetic used one of his ceremonial robes as a model. The figure standing on the other side is even more striking. He depicts a common soldier with a determined gaze. In his left hand he holds a coat of mail adorned with the coat of arms of Hungary. With his right hand he grips his drawn sword and looks around as if to ask, "Is there still an enemy threatening the queen?" He is the quintessential Hungarian soldier, in whom strength and courage are united, and whose movements are characterized by simplicity and naturalness. We note in parentheses that, due to the statue's geographical orientation, the stern-looking Kyrgyz warrior was scanning the western horizon for the enemy, which could be Prussia, but could just as easily be Vienna. The unveiling ceremony was covered not only by the Hungarian press but also by the foreign press. Leading European and overseas newspapers wrote about the work and the artist. The statue took its place among the famous 19th-century Hungarian works of art and became part of universal culture, joining that invisible timeline of fine art whose beginning was marked by the works of István Ferenczi and Miklós Izsó. There is no acceptable explanation for what happened after World War I. The statue, which had been surrounded by a wooden fence since the arrival of the Czechs, was attacked on October 26, 1921, with tow ropes, pickaxes, and hammers. According to some, their anger was triggered by Charles IV's second attempt to return to the throne. Marcel Yankovic's, a member of the National Assembly and one of the leading figures among the Hungarians of Upper Hungary between the two world wars, recalled this shocking event as follows. Already the night before, a cheerful group, all from beyond the Morava, had been circling the statue, which was draped in a wooden cloak, singing. A few of us Hungarians watched this singing group. I love singing when the song is inspired by some human or humane feeling. This was a terribly ominous song. We looked at one another and sensed that something was brewing here, something that could not be beautiful or good. The next day, as the autumn twilight fell, they appeared. Those people, brimming with national pride. They have no name. Srobar's government sent them. A noose flew from the truck, first around the Queen's neck, then around the necks of the Hungarian dahlia plants. The truck's engine roared with a rumbling roar. The wire rope snapped. The second one snapped as well. Those men, or them, or whatever I should call these few zealots, lunged at them with hammers and chisels. They pounded the shanks of the Dahlians' boots and the hooves of the Queen's steeds until they were thin enough to finally topple over. Once on the ground, they could then slap, kick, and hammer the marble faces into a grotesque shape. Only the stumps of the two men's boots and a part of the horse's body stared up into the gray autumn sky. The police cordon watched just as impassively as we did from behind the cordon. Only then would a police officer or constable move when someone bent down to hide a fragment of marble in his jacket as a keepsake, or when someone gasped. Anyone who disapproved of this glorious rearrangement of the square was sent to Aranyosmrad, to prison that very day. The pieces of the monumental marble statue were later sold, and new works were created from the larger sections that remained intact. An unknown individual acquired several pieces of the statue and had them sent to Budapest in 1928. A reporter from the Nemzeti Újság was able to examine the remains of the statue in the courtyard of the National Museum immediately upon their arrival. The Czech vandals also did a thorough job. Where the hammer wasn't enough, they resorted to the chisel. There, among the rubble, lies the head of the statue, with St. Stephen's crown still on it. But in what a state! The face has not a single feature left. Some barbaric hand has carved it down to flat surfaces. Next to it lies another head, that of the Hungarian nobleman, who in the statue gazed up at the great Queen's face with rapt enthusiasm. This head is relatively intact, though it too bears terrible mutilations. The defiant head of the Kyrgyz warrior suffered the same fate, though it was also managed to be salvaged in a more or less intact condition. The fragments of the statue were exhibited at the National Museum, and one piece was placed as a relic on the pedestal of the monument erected in Budapest in 1933 by the 32nd Honved Infantry Regiment, founded by Maria Theresa. During the turmoil of World War II, several pieces disappeared or were destroyed. János Fadrusz's unique work of art, carved from marble, was permanently destroyed in October 1921. The current initiative and back and forth aimed at restoring a replica of the statue is a story in itself, one that does not fit into our series chronicling the fate of our monuments.